Hi, welcome back. I hope you've been enjoying my videos on the Odyssey and the Aeneid. Today's video is all about what genre is the Odyssey. So often when we think about the Odyssey, we're looking at epic and Homeric epic and what makes something a Homeric epic, and today we're going to look at how the Odyssey knits together other elements of the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share to keep the channel going. I'm Maria Haley, the Millennial Classicist. Okay, so there are three basic genres of storytelling. We all love to tell good stories. It's part of human nature. There's legend, folktale, and myth. And what Homer does in the Odyssey is he wraps these three together to make something that is greater than the sum of its parts, really. So for example, a folktale is something like a short invention. It's a story that often has a moral ending and that's designed to instruct. You could think of fables as a form of folktale. Legends have some kind of basis in history and the details might have been invented or exaggerated. So a legend is often based in reality but then really distorted. And a myth is a story that's not necessarily untrue, but it becomes more focused on belief and can become entwined in religion. So to give you an idea, a film like Guy Ritchie's King Arthur could be an example of a legend, Cinderella could be an example of a folktale, and then Hercules, with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, could be an example of myth, because Hercules had a religious cult in Greece. So you can see how different kinds of fantasy stories are based on different forms of storytelling: folktale, myth, and legend. When we think about the Odyssey, there are different elements within the Odyssey that speak to these different genres. So, for example, if you think about the different features in the Odyssey, we have a recognition scene like the folktale of Cinderella where the slipper goes on, really similar to Euryclea's recognition of Odysseus' scar. We have transformation, and we see this all the time. Athena really steams in like the fairy godmother in Cinderella and transforms characters like Odysseus to make them have a different status in society, totally the same as Bippity Boppity Boo. We have journeys and monsters to overcome, and we see this also in folktales of, say, Sinbad. So these different elements would probably have existed within the Homeric world separately through an oral tradition of storytelling and myth, and then would have been formalised through song in something like an epic, which would have been performed by a rhapsode, somebody accompanied usually perhaps by a lyre, and singing the whole of the story. We only really kind of access this tradition of storytelling in things like if you've ever watched the song scenes in Game of Thrones where someone starts to play a harp and sing the stories of what's been happening, that is perhaps the closest you can get to kind of seeing what a rhapsode would function like in society. We also have features within the Odyssey that make it speak to the audience at the time. So for example, the way that the characters interact with one another and the way that they fulfill the different gender roles. Penelope has her weaving, Telemachus is coming of age as a fighter and as a man, and goes on a small journey of his own in the Telemachy to learn about his father Odysseus. We see this with the suitors as well, and when hospitality and Xenia goes wrong, so Xenia is a really strong thread throughout the entirety of the Odyssey. But within Homer's epic, you can see the 7 keystones of storytelling. So there's a theory that says there are basically 7 different ways to possibly tell a story. You have overcoming the monster, which we see in the Polyphemus episode when Odysseus faces off with the Cyclops. We have rags to riches, and back again, which we see when Odysseus is disguised as a beggar and when he appears as a stranger in Scheria as well. We have the quest. So for Odysseus, arriving home is like a prize. His nostos is the kind of holy grail of his journey. Voyage and return, which doesn't even really bear saying. We know that Odysseus' story is mainly about voyage and return. Comedy, well, perhaps also in the way that Odysseus teases Polyphemus and the way that he outsmarts some of his opposition. If you think when he's leaving Polyphemus' cave, he says that he is no one, Udeis, a pun on his name. Tragedy, you could perhaps see in the plot against Telemachus, and the idea of rebirth. So some threads of the 7 stories are certainly much stronger than the others. I would say voyage and return and overcoming the monster are the 2 key threads that Homer pulls through. So what we see then are elements of folk tale, elements of legend and elements of myth, all pieced together and packaged as an epic. And we see this debate in scholarship as well. For example, in The Two Worlds of Odysseus, Jenkins argues that there's Odysseus the Homeric Hero, which I've spoken about in a video before and I'll link below, and there's Odysseus as a kind of folktale hero like Sinbad. So the expectations we have from Homer and the Iliad of Odysseus being a good fighter and wanting a beautiful death and striving for glory, and how that has to be reimagined in the Odyssey. And there were expectations that an audience might have from the folktale heroes they were familiar with, of somebody who kind of gets up to all sorts of scrapes in adventures, isn't necessarily a great leader, but is able to overcome monsters. And those two Odysseus's exist side by side. Jenkins argues that it's actually the combination of the two that make the Odyssey special. So thinking about how these different threads of genre are woven together to make something that's more than the sum of its parts. I hope you found that video helpful. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share to keep the channel going. If you're really interested in the Odyssey, have a look at the Odyssey products in my Redbubble store. There are lots of different designs on there for you to choose from and loads and loads of different products at really good prices. Thanks!